Okay, so this Activision, Blizzard, Xbox deal is very interesting because there's all sorts of tea that's being spilled, all sorts of industry trade secrets and release dates, and all sorts of things happening at this event. And I find it hilarious to go through and see people battle back and forth about this deal and Xbox acquiring Activision Blizzard for $70 billion, and what the judge is saying, and what lying, crying Jim Ryan is saying, and all this stuff that is happening. A lot of lying and twisting of the truth going on here. Heck, even misinformation. Bobby Kotick knowing what the next Nintendo Switch will be, or the next gen system will be Xbox and PlayStation 4 in power. When it comes down to it, he didn't say that, but people took that and ran with it. No, Bobby Kotick doesn't know what the next gen Switch is in terms of specs or power. He literally said that right afterwards. He was speculating, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about what the judge said and how it kind of proves that Nintendo is quite possibly the future when it comes down to what companies are going to do. Well, I want to talk about this, or maybe even the judge actually showed why the Nintendo Switch is the best-selling device in modern history here. We haven't had a system sell as good as this since the Nintendo DS / PS2, PS4 almost got there, but obviously the Switch is above that. And maybe this judge that's presiding over this case actually revealed the secret sauce here, or not so secret. So we're going to talk about that and a number of other things. But before we get into that, guys, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to the video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. And check out our PE live daily live streams right here at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Now let's go ahead and jump right back into this, because Stephen Totillo over on Twitter has been covering this Activision Blizzard Xbox lawsuit with the FTC and all of that. And like I said, it's hilarious. Make sure you guys go check him out on Twitter if you want to get all of the up-to-date coverage. But there was one part about the Nintendo Switch that had me dying laughing. And here's what Stephen Totillo had to say on it that the judge said. Judge suggests Switch might be better than Gen 9 because it hooks up to TV and you can take it to the airport. The observation somehow briefly knocks out the audio feed. This was absolutely hilarious, and the comments there were just so funny. But I actually quote tweeted this. If you follow me on Twitter, make sure you follow me at PlayerEssence. I quote tweeted this and said, LOL, this is the reason why after Switch we've seen Steam Deck, Aeon Neo, or whatever you pronounce it, multiple versions of that, Air 2, whatever the case is, Asus, ROG Ally, Sony, Project Q, Logitech G, whatever that thing is that Microsoft is promoting. You see all of these hybrid systems, all these hybrid devices wanting to get in on the action because the hybrid nature of the platform is just super cool. That's why it's really good. This judge just says it right there. People are wondering why the Xbox Series X is getting smoked by the Nintendo Switch and the PS5. Obviously, it's selling really good, but Switch has actually been outselling it for the past couple of months now with Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. But honestly, it's because of that nature. The fact that the Switch in its 6th plus year at this point can outsell newer systems that are far more powerful. It's because you can take it anywhere. I mean, it's because Nintendo has taken what they've done best, which is video games and also portable systems, and turned it into a hybrid to where you can play on your TV and you can play it on the go. Yes, you can play it at an airport. People do like to travel. Airports are always busy when they're not making you wait and stuff like that and delaying flights. People are always at airports. People are always traveling. So having a Nintendo Switch obviously makes it a very attractive system, and which is why we've seen all these companies between Valve and all these different Chinese manufacturers that are making these different systems, and these computer companies like Asus, they're all trying to get in on the hybrid form factor, and they're not copying Microsoft and Sony making set-top box consoles. They're making hybrids because they're seeing what the Nintendo Switch has done and how that's probably going to be the future. Probably in the distant future, I see pretty much everybody having a hybrid device, some type of hybrid device that plays all of your games. Even if you have a console, you still have some type of hybrid device that can play everything. I think in the future, these chips are going to get way better when it comes to the power of them. And then the battery technology, that's where everything's kind of like far behind right now. There's powerful GPU mobile chips out there that you can put into these systems and have Asus ROG where you have all sorts of teraflops of power, but that thing literally lasts like 5 seconds when you're playing like a big AAA game. So that's the problem right now, is the battery life is just terrible with some of these devices. Even the Steam Deck battery life isn't great, and these systems aren't using OLEDs. These systems aren't really having the best technology when it comes to the screen either, and it's not like they have 4K resolutions and all that. So right now it's behind on that front. There's powerful GPUs, there's powerful CPUs for these systems, but the battery technology just isn't good enough right now. And I think that's something that Nintendo is absolutely looking at when it comes to the next gen Nintendo Switch and what they're going to do with that. So I think that that is going to be a major player in this whole game when it comes to the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series S and X and what Nintendo's going to do next. The Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be super highly anticipated because it's probably going to have some pretty good technology in there. We could see some DLSS stuff. We just don't know what Nintendo's up to right now outside of a few leaks that we've gotten. But obviously, this judge knows what they're talking about there, man. And honestly, Nintendo, with their first party development with stuff like Pokemon and Fire Emblem and Mario and Zelda and Smash Brothers and Mario Kart, all on one platform for the first time really in their history when it comes to them getting into the market outside of the original NES. And when that first started, once the Game Boy came out, Nintendo always split development, and it's pretty much been like that up until 2017 or so. And even after 2017 with the Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo did support that system with a few titles here and there before they just dropped it. But now at this point, we've been getting pretty much the full brunt of Nintendo's forces and their development studios and games and everything. And that's because they went with something that they knew they'd be able to handle when it comes to the price and when it comes to the battery. And they enhanced that formula with the Nintendo Switch Lite or with the Nintendo Switch V2 and the Nintendo Switch OLED. So it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to be next for Nintendo, especially considering all these different portable PC hybrids that are coming out with all these different specs and everything. So I'm looking forward to what Nintendo does, because I know the battery life is going to be balanced out. I know there's going to be certain things in there that's going to be unique to what Nintendo is going to do. Heck, we might see another advancement in the OLED, because Nintendo Switch OLED is pretty nice. It's a nice display on there. So we'll see what Nintendo decides to do next with the system. But speaking about what's next, let's talk about The Legend of Zelda and what's happening with that franchise and what Nintendo wants to do next there. So the Legend of Zelda series producer Mr. Aonuma has once again commented on the possibility of revisiting the old school entries in the series, but there's no plans as of right now. Now, Mr. Aonuma said that games like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are possible because of what came before them and Nintendo taking ideas from them and making something new. So let's go ahead and get into what he had to say here. Now, here is the first question that was asked in the interview. The last two Zeldas are very different. Old fans sometimes cry out that they would prefer a classic old-fashioned Zelda. Would you like to make that sometime? Here's what Mr. Aonuma had to say. It's difficult to say anything about the future. That being said, thanks to previous Zelda games, a game like Tears of the Kingdom now exists. The game originated from the ideas that we had in the past. We always try to create something that offers more than previous titles. We really aren't concerned with our older games anymore. We prefer to look to the future. So pretty much what he's been saying before, and I'll say this when it comes down to it. I see a lot of people talk about they want classic Zelda, they want it to be linear, or they want it to be, I go to this dungeon, this dungeon, this dungeon, terrible overworld for the most part, and I just play games in that order, and the puzzles are set, and I have to do that. They don't really like, or maybe they just want to go back to that. But the problem with that is this. Nintendo sold 30 million plus copies of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. They sold 10 million copies of Tears of the Kingdom in the first 3 days, and that game is probably on its way, well on its way, to 20 million copies at this point. So combined, that is 50 million copies between two games so far, or very close to that. Yeah, with that amount of money coming in and that much, they're not really going to go back to the old school Zeldas that struggle to get anywhere near those sales. What they're going to do is they're going to take some of the cool things that old Zeldas do, some of the things that this Zelda does, and try to create a new type of Zelda game that has different aspects and different things to shock and wow players going forward. They made Breath of the Wild, they made Tears of the Kingdom, which is iterative of Breath of the Wild, and I think that at this point, they're going to take some things from all these different Zelda games and create another thing that's new, or create another thing that can be the next big thing, the Breath of the Wild of the next Switch or the next generation, right? They're not going to go back and create something that's completely traditional to what they already had before. They've done that before. They've done remasters. We've seen Link's Awakening, we've seen Skyward Sword, and obviously those don't sell anywhere near as much as Breath of the Wild. Now, what I do think that they're going to do when it comes to classic Zelda, I do think they're going to port over some of the old school Zelda games. We should see Wind Waker at some point. We should see Twilight Princess at some point, and I know that people have been saying that pretty much all generation now, but I think that we will see those games at some point for a more modern system that Nintendo has. But I also think that Nintendo will remake some of the older Zeldas as well. I think that one of these days we will get a Ocarina of Time remake, a real big Ocarina of Time remake on an HD platform, not the Nintendo 3DS game that we did get. That was a really high-end remaster, remake, whatever. I think that we will get something like that, or we will get a really high-end remake of Majora's Mask or something like that, right? So there will be a time that that happens, but I don't see Nintendo going completely back to that classic formula when you sold 10 million copies in 3 days, and no other Zelda game that had that classic formula even did that. Now, maybe if Skyward Sword sold like, 10 million copies at this point, or maybe if Link's Awakening did really good, maybe they're thinking, okay, we can kind of go way more back to that. But the fact that Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild did so well, they're going to want to iterate on that, but then add in new elements to make it feel fresh and new, while adding in some of those classic things, like maybe hook shot for the next game, or maybe some of those other things, or maybe more elaborate dungeons. But they're not going to really just go straight back to that formula with Ocarina of Time, all that. That's not happening, not based on the money that's coming in. They're going to try to do something new and fresh, but then also take some of the best aspects of the previous Zelda games. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do next. I cannot wait to see it, but I still think that there's DLC coming for Tears of the Kingdom, and I think it's going to be large-scale DLC. I think they're going to add some extra things for people to do after some time, give people enough time to get through all the content, but I do expect there to be DLC news for Tears of the Kingdom probably sometime in the fall, maybe at a direct. Then we get some big DLC for the game. Maybe we get like a master mode as well. So I do think that will happen. Obviously, the game's selling incredibly well, and I do think that Nintendo's going to package everything and also re-release it on the Nintendo Switch 2, or backwards compatible if you already have the game, but also re-release it on Switch 2, maybe smooth it out a little bit when it comes to the frame rate, and also increase the resolution. We'll see though. We will see exactly what happens. But it's exciting times for Zelda fans. And speaking of that, when it comes down to the sales, I do want to mention real quick here, guys, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom continues its dominance on the US eShop. Once again, the #1 game, even with new releases like Pikmin 1 and 2 shooting up the charts. In Japan, it actually surpassed Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but Pikmin 1 and 2 got to #2, but Tears of the Kingdom still at the top of the board. And once again shows you that Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is just doing absolutely incredible. This game is selling like no other Zelda game before. Obviously, Nintendo has the install base at this point. They just have the marketing. Everything just worked for Tears of the Kingdom, and you constantly see it at the top of sales charts in all regions. Now, even well more than a month after it came out. We're going on 2 months now at this point, and Tears of the Kingdom is still there. And I think that Tears of the Kingdom is going to be at the top of the charts probably until we get like another big release like Pikmin 4. That could be a game that kind of passes it up for a bit, but I don't see Tears of the Kingdom dropping out of like the top 10 or so on the eShop, and I don't see it dropping out of the top 10 to 15 games on Amazon or most of the major sales regions, probably until like the end of the year or maybe even next year. That's how well this game is going to sell. This is going to be the biggest game that Nintendo has this year. We'll have to wait and see about Super Mario Bros. Wonder and how well that game does, but Zelda always starts off really hot, and those 2D Mario games actually take a little bit of time to get going. But now Nintendo's actually launching a 2D Mario game that has a massive install base behind it. There hasn't been a 2D Mario game on a system launch this big since I think on the Wii, New Super Mario Bros. Maybe that, if I'm not correct. But yeah, this is the first time that we've actually seen a 2D Mario launch on a system install base this big, with 100 and probably 30 million plus by the time that game comes out. So Tears of the Kingdom is definitely going to be up there overall, but it's going to be interesting to see some of these other games and how they do compared to Tears of the Kingdom. But what are your thoughts on all the different Nintendo news here that we went over? Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out our other videos right here on screen. Thank you for watching. We'll see you for the next one. Peace.